Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is the 3rd of March 2025. These are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the IMF mission that is arriving in Pakistan today for a review on the EFF. Now, this is a review of course, the EFF that the IMF had facilitated Pakistan with, and they are here to see whether things are moving in the right direction. This is a 9-member IMF mission which is led by Nathan Porter. What will be the basic modalities of this mission? How is Pakistan undergoing the reforms as per the IMF requirements? This and more will be discussed in our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Middle East and of course with Gaza in particular. There are two important things when it comes to Gaza now. Firstly, the fact that aid has been stopped by Israel from entering Gaza in the holy month of Ramadan leads to many question marks as to what the future of the ceasefire deal will be, because if you stop the aid, you stop one of the preconditions as far as the ceasefire deal is concerned. The second also concerns the ceasefire deal and whether there will be an extension of the first phase of the ceasefire deal or whether the second phase of the ceasefire deal will begin, because this is what Hamas wants. They want the second phase to begin, but apparently Israel does not want that. They want the first phase to be extended and then see how things lead, and a lot of question marks also are apparent as far as the second phase of this deal is concerned. This is going to be our second story. Then we are going to discuss the 97th Annual Academy Awards that were held last evening in the US and early this morning in Pakistan, and surprise entry as one of the films that got the major prizes was Anora, that did get some prizes in the previous awards, but not there were not too much expectation from it. And Anora got 5 major awards, including the Best Film, Best Director and Best Actress. We will be also highlighting which films got the awards this year at the Academy Awards. Let's begin with our first segment, and this concerns the IMF mission that is arriving today, which is a 9-member mission, and of course this is here for a review of the EFF that they had signed Pakistan with. We have been joined by 2 guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. In the studios, we've been joined by Jauhar Saleem Saab. He's a former Foreign Secretary and the President of the think tank IRS. Thank you very much, Jauhar Saab, to have joined us. Our second guest is Shaaf Najib. He's an economist and joins us online. Shaaf, thank you very much to have joined us as well. We'll begin with you, Jauhar Saab. This 9-member mission that is here in Pakistan to review the IFF, the talks to continue till the 15th of this very month, and they are here to assess the country's compliance with the quantitative performance criteria, the structural benchmarks and the indicative targets under this 37-month program. And there are 2 parts of these talks: technical level talks and the policy level talks as well, and officials from different ministries will be involved in Pakistan with these talks. Is this a normal review? What is the basic necessity or objective of this review?
Yeah, this is a routine review. Nathan Porter, who's heading this delegation to Pakistan, he's the director for IMF's mission for Pakistan. And earlier he'd been working on the China desk as well in the IMF. So Pakistan has this EFF. We've had to go to IMF for over a dozen times. EFF is an extended fund facility, and what happens is, this facility is for $7 billion over 3 years, roughly 37 months, like you said. But then the money is not just given to you like that. The money is given in tranches. So this time it will be for a tranche of $1.1 billion. So before every tranche, IMF teams, they come for review. They have talks with different organs within the government. For instance, this time they'll be meeting the state bank officials, of course the Ministry of Finance, then FBR, but also Iqra, NEPRA. So officials from various parts of the government. And the talks are very comprehensive. Like you said, first the officials level talks, the technical levels, and then the policy level. And then basically, because you see, IMF and Pakistan, they have agreed certain benchmarks. And then what they do is, in these talks, they see how much of the benchmarks have been achieved by Pakistan. And if there are any lacunas somewhere, what are the reasons? And are those reasons substantive, because and if the IMF team is not satisfied, then these talks get protracted, and then the tranche can be delayed. But in this particular instance, what we see is that Pakistan has been for their 17 benchmarks, for example, and Pakistan has done well. If we talk about the key sort of areas here, there's a primary surplus. They have exceeded the target for primary surplus. Similarly, they have exceeded the target for the GDP, tax GDP ratio. So these are some of the very key concerns of the IMF. But there are many other areas where probably there's certain areas where we need to do better, and because you see there's quite a wide array of things that we're looking at, and that would include even sort of the quality of governance, even sometimes the level of corruption, for example, like the rule of law situation, so all these factors, and then if there's certain areas where the government has not done well, are the reasons cogent enough, But what I see is that I think the pressure would be there, of course, but I don't really see any major breakdown, the possibility of a major breakdown here. And I think we are on course, generally speaking, for us sort of, for a relatively smooth sailing.
All right. So basically, there's compliance on all the major issues. Shaaf, coming to you, a key agenda amongst other key agendas as far as this submission's aim is to also look at a tax relief for the salaried class, which a lot of people say remains conditional on the IMF approval. They will also assess Pakistan's budgetary framework, fiscal consolidation efforts, revenue generation measures, and of course, discussions are going to also be held with all the 4 provinces to align the fiscal targets amongst all of the provinces in Pakistan. And of course, Pakistan's economic policies when it comes to taxation, energy pricing or structural reforms will also be discussed during the course of these discussions. The government says it hopes for a successful completion of these talks and a release of around 1.1 billion tranche within 3 weeks. Is Pakistan ready for the IMF?
Well, see, I think given how many times we have gone to the IMF, I think our government departments and government arms are very, very well equipped in how they need to, report the progress to the IMF. So I think that's not the worry over here. But the major worry that is actually obviously in such cases is how we view our progress as compared to how the IMF compares the progress of the country. And obviously, the major question being that what plan do we have going forward in both cases? Obviously, the government would be going into these talks with the hopes that that the review is approved and we receive the next tranche, which again I believe is a major possibility under current circumstances. But the question obviously remains that what next? What after that? And I think that's a question that we need to ask. That obviously, with now the government also going into the budget making process, and obviously this review is going to have an important impact on the budget proposals that are discussed. So I think the major question that we need to ask is: are we ready for the period that starts after this review? And in that, as you have talked about the tax relief, particularly regarding the salaried class, the questions that, as a researcher and as an economist, that comes to my mind is how will that relief actually be financed? Because at a time when you're talking about relief, you're talking about reducing the tax collection from the salaried class, either in terms of maybe you could say reducing the tax rates or maybe changing the tax slabs. But all in all, if you're giving relief to the salaried class, you would need to have more taxes from the other sectors. And obviously, if the government in that turns up towards increasing the indirect taxes or maybe increase the withholding taxes, then that will have an adverse impact on the overall economy and the same salary class that they might be giving a relief to. So the question is, or what I hope rather is that there are efforts and there are plans to bring the untaxed sectors into the tax nets and expand the tax net. And that is the major, I would say, the major step required to give the tax relief to a much needed, I would say, tax relief to the salaried class.
All right, all right. Let's see how things move along as far as these coming days is concerned, whether the government will be able to do that or not. Jauhar Saleem Sahab, you talked about the higher than targeted primary budget surplus. You've highlighted that while answering my last question, and also the greater than estimated revenue to GDP ratio because of better receipts from non-tax revenues such as central bank profit, petroleum levy, telecom profits, etc. But you did highlight that, but what I want to understand is, are all these measures going to be enough for the IMF, or are they going to demand more?
They always want more, of course, so that will be there because, okay, they'll be satisfied with some of these things, but then there are many other areas where, for instance, there's the area of energy, there's the area of governance, like I've said, rule of law, in terms of corruption and and also, in terms of the what we are doing with the revenues, that's important as well. And then they'll be meeting all the provincial finance authorities as well. So in terms of the relations, the financial relations between the center and the province. So they are concerned with all that. But what the important thing here is that this is an EFF, this is extended fund facility. I wish that we would have if we would be having an ESF, for example, which is an extended credit facility program by IMF, because the difference is that EFF has a very significantly higher rate of interest. There's the usual rate of an interest, and then on top of that, they put the IMF surcharges, and then they put the commitment surcharge, and there are many other surcharges.
All right.
And it almost then is close to the market rate of interest. On the other hand, ECF, the extended credit facility, that is for low-income countries, and that is basically for poverty reduction and long-term programs. And it has a much longer-term perspective than the EFF. So I wish that we would basically, at some point go into an ECF, a hefty one, rather than the EFF, which is basically a stopgap operation. There was another team from IMF just a week ago.
On climate finance.
Exactly. I think that is an important area, because that is an area where I see a lot of possibilities, for Pakistan in the coming years. Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable countries in terms of climate change. But unfortunately, so far, the funding that has come has been minimal.
COP, even if you look at the COPs, what has happened? Pakistan, all the pledges that were made for Pakistan, what did Pakistan actually receive?
Yeah, very right. For example, this loss and damage fund was a big accomplishment in a way.
True.
But at the end of the day, the money that has come into loss and damage fund for the whole world, that's just a few $100 million. So the thing is, in terms of climate financing, that is an area, in the last COP 29, there has been a commitment of hundreds of billions of dollars. But then we have to see, because there was a commitment of $100 billion for GCF as well many years ago, but the actual money that comes is basically repurposed money, which is money already allocated for other things, and then it's just kind of garbed as the GCF. So that is, I think, where we have to work harder. The second thing that I want to say here is that, look, these are, like I said, these are stopgap operations, and they could help you because we had a balance of payment crisis, and you need IMF in such situations, and EFF is for that particular purpose. But we need to have a longer-term perspective for for economic stability and growth, and for that we'll have to undertake structural reforms, profound structural reforms. And because if you don't do that, then after every few years to go back to IMF, and this has been happening for so many times. This is more than a dozen times already that we have gone to the IMF. So, and that is why I think we really need to invest on our human resources, on education, on health. We have to really improve the governance. We have to institute meritocracy, and it's very important also the rule of law, because in Pakistan, if there's no contract enforcement, and that is where we have, this is probably one of our weakest links, then the investment from abroad will not come. Even domestic investment will not happen to the same degree. People will not have the incentive to save to the same. And unless you have that type of a saving rate and investment rate, in the longer term, you can't really stabilize economically and develop economically. So I think we have to go beyond what IMF is asking. We have to think, we have to have a longer term, 10, 15, 20 years perspective, and then work on that.
Exactly, and continuity of policies, that is extremely important as well. Shaaf, coming to you. Jauhar Saleem Saab did point towards structural reforms. Now, a lot of authorities here and a lot of people say that we need to be better prepared for the expansion of the tax net in the retail sector, outstanding structural bank benchmarks regarding amendments to the sovereign fund by the end of December. The experts say that except for this sovereign wealth fund, almost all the 17 structural benchmarks, some continuous till the end of February have been met, with some have had some delays, but most of the 17 structural benchmarks have been met with. How do you see the commitment made by Pakistan as far as the structural benchmarks are concerned and structural reforms that need to be undertaken by Pakistan? What do you expect that Pakistan needs to do in the coming weeks and months?
Well, Umar, as I mentioned earlier as well, I think that as far as meeting the targets set by the IMF for this review, I think Pakistan would have done very good on that. So I think that's not a major cause of worry. There might be a few points where the IMF might see things differently than Pakistan, but I think during the talks they might be able to further discuss on how to go about these in the up till the next review, particularly regarding the downsizing of the government or the reforms within the state-owned enterprise, and especially the energy sector. And I think during these negotiations, Pakistan and IMF are going to develop a road plan regarding how they want things to move in up till the next review, right? But I think what Pakistan also needs to do is it needs to shift its focus from just planning for the next IMF review to planning for the economy and the country for the next decade. And that is possible, as Ambassador Jauhar Saab pointed out, through structural reforms, right? So when we're talking about taxation, as you also mentioned, there are many untaxed sectors, whereas there is also a major issue of tax compliance in many tax sectors. So, for instance, as the example you gave regarding the retail sector, so there is a compliance issue in that. So we need to introduce technology such so that transactions can be you could say recorded, and so that people adopt more digital ways of having those transactions, so that cash transactions within the retail sector are reduced. They are more easy to document and hence are able to increase the compliance within the retail sector and other sectors such as that. But then again, there are a whole lot of untaxed sectors. For instance, the agriculture income is largely untaxed, although it you could say it contributes around a quarter of the GDP every year. So these are the things that we need to look separately when we are talking about taxation reform. Similarly, we need to reform our governance structure as well. One of the conditions of the IMF also is about improving the governance, reforming the government footprint, and also reducing the size of the government. And the size of the government doesn't just mean the size of the cabinet or the parliament, but all the entire government footprint and the government entities and the employees within them. And I think that is going to be a major cause of contention, major cause of you could say disagreement within IMF and Pakistan in this review. But I think hopefully we will be able to devise a plan on how to go about that for the next review as well.
All right. Jauhar Saab, let's talk some facts and figures. The IMF says around 45% of the EFF envisaged fiscal adjustment, which is around 3% of the GDP, was legislated upfront as a prior action in the federal budget 2024-2025. Also, implementation of a large increase in the electricity tariffs as part of the new energy policy. The remaining structural conditionality has been oriented towards strengthening the tax system, addressing the energy bottlenecks, restructuring or privatizing public sector enterprises, strengthening of central bank operational independence, enhancing fiscal sector financial or the sector stability, and protecting the most vulnerable. Will these conditionalities also be met with by the government, or are there certain bottlenecks in these?
No, these conditionalities, you see, because these conditionalities have a medium-term perspective and then a shorter-term perspective, you know. So these targets are based on a shorter-term perspective, like let's say a yearly or 6 monthly or whatever. So those targets, I think, so like on the fiscal side, we'd be meeting. But on the other side, for example, in terms of privatization, I think we're probably lagging behind. On the energy side as well, we need to do more. On the governance side as well, we need to do more. Because quite frankly, in the last 10 years, the only good idea that I feel which came in terms of how we could improve our bureaucratic systems and governance, at least at the bureaucratic level, was the National Executive Service, and that never happened. Even that has not materialized despite having so many commissions and everything. But by successive governments, and I'm not saying any particular government, by successive governments, they could not really enact that reform. Similarly, in the ambit of rule of law, for example, contract enforcement, like I meant, judicial reforms, for instance, these are the areas where we're weaker. We are much weaker, and these are the areas where you have to have a longer term perspective. But in the other areas, like for example, fiscal, in terms of sort of like tax GDP and sort of in terms of reducing your expenditures, coming up with surpluses, primary surpluses. These are the areas where we have done rather well. So the short-term targets, I think, would be generally achieved more or less. Of course, IMF is not going to be 100% satisfied. They will kind of register their sort of and they will point out the areas where we need to do more, and that happens in every review. So it's not really something uncommon, But I think the important thing here is for us to take a longer term perspective and come up with a holistic plan of not just to stabilize the economy, but you see, now these indicators are good. The inflation has gone down, for example, very significantly. Interest rates have gone down, foreign reserves have gone up, exports have gone up, remittances have gone. These are all good indicators.
True.
But the fact is, how about the real economy? How about the industrial capacity? Has that increased? Has the industrial production increased? Has the agricultural production increased? Has the GDP growth rate? We need a GDP growth rate of 6 to 7% just to sustain the increase of a population that we're having. We're still one of the highest in the world. Are we having that? Not yet. You see, did we have it in the last 10 years? No. Did we have it in the last 15 years? No. So I think that is why I'm talking about profound structural reforms. So we could, because you see, we are now lagging behind in South Asia, which is one of the poorest regions of the world, in terms of GDP growth, in terms of other economic indicators, and more importantly, in terms of the human development indicators, than everybody else, literally. Whether it's India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, So I think that is why there's that need for a longer term perspective.
All right, there's a need for a longer term perspective. Last question to you, Shaaf, and that concerns some of the areas that the IMF says we need to implement. You have talked about it in your last answer as well, expanding direct taxes by bringing retailers, property owners and agricultural income into the tax, and we've discussed that. Rationalizing personal and corporate income taxes by reducing exemptions and streamlining rates in the GST system, also enhancing federal excise duty coverage and eliminating tariff exemptions to increase the custom revenue. My question has two parts. My first part concerns these focus points. How easy or difficult is it for Pakistan, looking at its past, to implement all of these in these coming weeks? Is this going to be a slow burning process, or could this be implemented in the next couple of weeks? Secondly, the RSF facility, also the arrangement for Pakistan, for which another team is here since last week. Do you feel Pakistan is going to get the RSF facility? If so, can Pakistan also in due time ask for a bigger chunk of money when it comes to climate resilience or climate finance? These are two parts of the same question, and I'd like your point of view on that.
Well, Omar, implementation of such reforms, and that too at such a large scale, is not an easy task for any country, and it's not something that can be done overnight. And I don't think the IMF would be expecting Pakistan to complete this in a short period of time. However, this is the time to take those steps, and I think that is what the IMF would be pushing Pakistan for as well. That they would want Pakistan to start taking these steps, start bringing these untaxed sectors into the tax net, start increasing compliance in the sectors that are taxed but where the compliance is low, and also for ensuring that there is you could say there isn't much variation in terms of the kind of taxes that are implemented on one group and the same tax implemented on another sector of the economy. So unification of the tax rates in that context. So I think it won't be easy. And it won't be overnight, but it needs to start now, and that's something that the IMF would be pushing Pakistan for, and something that it would be looking in the next review as well, as to how much progress have we made on that. Second question regarding the the facility regarding the climate finance. I think, as Ambassador Johar Saab also pointed out, that there were pledges made for towards Pakistan earlier as well. But though that did not materialize much. And of course, while we may question the role of global powers in that, we also need to look into ourselves as to why we were not able to complete those conditionalities which would have guaranteed those payments. And I think that is a big question that the IMF would be asking regarding the facility as well, as to our capacity and our ability to fulfill those conditionalities to achieve this. So I think it all boils down to our will and our intention to completing those conditions and ensuring that we get that facility. And I think if we do that, then there would be no barrier in IMF extending this facility to Pakistan.
All right, let's look and let's see what happens in the next couple of days. They will be interesting to watch as to what the IMF's perspective is as far as climate resilience, as well as the EFF is concerned, whether Pakistan is, complying with these conditionalities, whether it has the capacity to do so, as you've ably pointed out, and what needs to be done to further strengthen our system so that we can undergo all the reforms, including the structural reforms, as far as you are concerned, and you've talked about, and Ambassador Jauhar Saleem as well. Thank you very much, Shaaf, to have joined us for this very first segment and to have discussed Pakistan's economy in the wake of this IMF mission that arrives today in Pakistan. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns Middle East, with particular reference to Gaza. Now, the fact is that it's a holy month of Ramadan, and a couple of days back I'd done a segment on Gaza, and things seem to be moving in the right direction. We were saying, all right, maybe compared to the last Ramadan, where the whole of Middle East, or especially Palestine, was in turmoil, this time, despite the destruction, the people in Palestine might be able to have some kind of respite, but no, because Israel has stopped the aid from entering Gaza in any form whatsoever. And that is causing more or less the same situation as far as the hunger crisis in Palestine is concerned. To add to that misery is the fact that the first phase of the ceasefire that has ended on Saturday still eludes the Israelis, because they want to expand the timing of the first phase of the ceasefire. This was agreed upon in the ceasefire agreement. Nevertheless, all the conditionalities had been met by Hamas, and they were looking forward to the second phase so that the rest of the prisoner exchange could happen, and this ceasefire could move towards a logical conclusion. But apparently Israel does not want that. To discuss that and more, we continue to be joined by Ambassador Jauhar Saleem in the studios, and we've also been joined by General Retired RG Mohammad Abbas, who's a Syrian political and military analyst. We'll begin with Jauhar Saleem. Ambassador Saab, this hunger and this fear that the people of Palestine have now had anew. The fact is that we were all thinking that this Ramadan would be maybe different compared to the last one. But it seems as if Israel is hell-bent to repeating the same that it did in last Ramadan. Not only is the violence continuing to some extent, but also the current state of affairs as far as the humanitarian situation in Palestine continues as well, with the hunger and starvation, which is the fear of the people in Palestine. A lot of reactions and repercussions, not repercussions, but reactions have come, whether it be from the countries in the world, Egypt, Qatar, Jordan, the Red Cross, Red Crescent, Action for Humanity, that says Israel is deliberately starving a population that has already been brought to almost the brink of famine, or the Norwegian Refugee Council, or the Council of American Islamic Relations, says the far-right Israel's decisions to block this humanitarian aid adds to the war crimes case that was already there at the ICC. What I'd like to understand is why this again? Why now?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. But you see, I had said in my commentaries in various programs when this ceasefire was agreed upon, I had said at that point that the phase one would be implemented. That would be the easy part because they've agreed to that, although there might be some hiccups, every now and then. But the crunch would come with the next phases, because there's supposed to be 3 phases, And why is that? Because you see, in the next phase, they have to agree what happens with Gaza in terms of its administration or peacekeeping or whatever. And that is where, they have literally, like, there's no understanding, right? In fact, at that time, many other analysts felt that, oh, no, now that ceasefire has been agreed upon, everything will sort of, fall in place, it'll be hunky dory. But I was very clear in my mind that that was not going to happen.
But why? But I fail to understand why. If you agree to the first phase of ceasefire agreement, basic conditionality, what is stopping you from that? What is the basic mindset that is happening? Basically, that is...
Yeah, because elephant in the room is the second phase, which is what happens in Gaza. And that is where, the Israelis, what do the Israelis want? They do, like I had said before as well, they do not want Hamas to have any role there anymore, Now, they also they have diminished Hamas's capacity over this last more than a year of operations, but the capacity is still there. Like, it's not totally non-existent. It's not totally finished. The second thing is they do not want to see, because if Hamas governs that again, that means more resources, because you see now the rebuilding phase has to begin at some point, which means a lot of resources will become. So that is why you see all these ideas being floated. Trump came up with this idea that, okay, which was quite an outlandish idea, that, okay, we will displace all these people.
The Riviera of the Middle East.
And maybe build a Riviera and everything. Okay, not many countries took it seriously. And, so. Now, the other ideas, for instance, an opposition member of Israel, Lapid, has come up with an idea that they should be, the Egyptians should lead a force.
But that they have disagreed with. The Egyptians have disagreed.
No, the Egyptians have said no. But the thing is, although they have, what they've offered Egypt, that's very interesting. They've offered them that, okay, all the Egypt's debt will be taken care of if they do that, which is a huge incentive. But still, the Egyptians know if they get involved with that, what will happen? Because, then the resistance will be against them. So they want a multinational force led by Egypt. And this idea was floated before Lapid as well, by the way. This idea had been there on the table since many months. Then there are other ideas, peacekeepers outside the neighborhood, for example, right? Sometimes there was an idea of, American forces, but, but the way Trump wanted it, American forces only if the population is displaced. So the point is, there's no understanding there, right? So that is why this is amazing. The second thing is, what is the Israeli strategy? Israeli strategy is to, as much as possible, to get all the hostages freed, So because they know that once, the less hostages there are with Hamas, the less is their leverage, And then Israel could, let's say, again go after them, militarily, that is, kinetic operations. Because they do not want Hamas to have the capacity, even what Hamas is left with now. This is a survival battle in terms of force for Hamas on the one hand, and for Netanyahu on the other. Why? For Hamas, because, look, if they don't have any role in Gaza after this, they can't survive. On the other hand, Netanyahu's, we all know that there's a huge pressure on Netanyahu domestically. He's very unpopular, although he's regained a bit of a, public support, which he had but lost before. The cases against him in the Israeli Supreme Court, that whenever the elections are held, he's probably going to lose. So there are all these pressures. For him, survival lies in continued conflict, survival lies in continued conflict with Hamas in particular. And that is why he's not going to accept anything where Hamas gets some way out, And that is why I think this would be the trickiest phase now, the second phase. Because once they agree to the second phase, then the third phase might be easier. Hamas now has about 59 hostages. I mean, that's what that's what the general sort of, accepted figure is. And now every hostage from their point of view becomes very important, On the other hand, for Israel, it is, because, even now as we speak, demonstrations are taking place in Israel, against Netanyahu for release of all the hostages. And they're claiming that, he is trying to sort of, delay that because of his personal interest and everything. So it's a fairly complicated situation. But this is a situation which was, very much expected by many analysts, and myself as well. So, there's no surprise here. I think the surprise would be if they are able to find a quick way out of it, which doesn't really seem to be the case.
But the fact is there's no quick way out of it, and a lot of people thought that maybe finally Israel and the US have agreed to the conditionalities and they will move forward in the right direction. But as you said, many analysts were of the view that this will not sustain itself in the long term. Benjamin Netanyahu also warns Hamas that there will be further consequences. Israeli media reports that the government plans to cut electricity and water supplies to the region of Gaza as the next move, and also humanitarian aid that is already blocked. Israel wants to somehow pressurize Hamas to try to get them to meet Israel's demands when it comes to the extension of the ceasefire deal, which Hamas is not agreeing. And they say they don't agree to it, then we will do X, Y, Z. They also say that Hamas's demands and vision for an end to the war are unrealistic, quote unquote, and not in line with what Israel wants. There are so many things that I somehow, as even I'm not an analyst, but as a journalist, fail to understand as far as compliance from Israel and Netanyahu is concerned. Why are they so afraid to comply with Hamas's demands? Because at the end of the day, this is the land that they have occupied, haven't they?
Yeah, you see, their demands are totally conflicting in terms of their interests. Both sides have demands which do not suit the interests of the other side. So there's a huge conflict here, and that's why we've seen so much sort of destruction and devastation. Now, Netanyahu is prepared. Okay, he has these are his leverages that you've mentioned. The cutting off the electricity and water and sort of utilities, and also the cutting off supplies of humanitarian aid. These are not very moral things, sort of morally or kind of ethically.
But in this year, since the Gaza war began, what was moral or ethical?
Exactly, but he doesn't care. That is exactly my point. That many other countries would not have done that. They would not have used these type of leverages, because these are not kind of leverages within the sort of bracket of what would be sort of fair, even in a war situation. But he's prepared to use everything at his disposal, and he has been doing that. Whether it's kinetic operations or sort of like stopping the aid and sort of and putting all the pressure on the civilian population. He doesn't care. It's apparently if they starve or sort of people are dying of hypothermia, little kids. So the fact is, on the one side you see this type of sort of attitude and tenacity. On the other side, okay, Hamas is very tenacious as well. It's a very tenacious organization. They have survived, over the years in a very challenging circumstance. What they have gone through in the last 1 year was the full might of sort of, Israeli military, supported by the sort of, their sort of allies, very strong allies. But despite that, they have survived to a certain extent, So this is like, like I said, this is a survival battle now. This is basically, Israel and Hamas. They cannot coexist, sort of, and that is the problem here. That is the sticking point here, because if the two sides cannot coexist, then they will try to find out ways how to kind of, wreak the most damage. And from Netanyahu's perspective, if he cannot prove to his people that he has destroyed Hamas, then he cannot politically survive.
It was all a question of his political stability or survival at the end of the day, wasn't it?
Exactly. It is a question of survival for both sides.
All right. General retired RG Mohammad Abbas, Syrian political military analyst, joins us online as well. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. We've been discussing the ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel, and the fact that Israel wants now an extension of the first phase of the deal, and is putting on many preconditions of whether and if Hamas does not agree with these preconditions, that it is going to further incur damage to Palestinians, as if the damage that has already been done is not enough. Now, Netanyahu calls this proposal to extend the first phase of the deal as something that is US-backed, which was put forth by Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, but it is not yet confirmed that this is in fact actually the case by Washington's side. What I'm trying to understand is, can this ceasefire deal be salvaged somehow? Because looking at what is happening, it seems as if it is all but finished. Secondly, the US backing the Israeli move for the extension of the first phase of the ceasefire deal, and if so, why?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for your invitation and to be now with you. Actually, ceasefire in Gaza Strip nowadays is going, but for a mid-time, because we know that Israel aims is not to go forward for ceasefire. Israel has many times or many projects in the not only in Gaza Strip but for all the region. So the ceasefire nowadays in Gaza, it is just a step. It is just a, let's say, uh, they want to win time. They want to gain time because the aim for Gaza is uh, in another side. Netanyahu or Israel is going to plan for Gaza for not only for Gaza but for the whole region. Now, ceasefire could be now supported by America, but only as America or only as Netanyahu like, not as the Palestinian like. So phase one or phase two, the agreement or the truce which signed or which is going nowadays between Palestinian in Hamas and Israel, it is just a step, as I said. But what the this is a step now for winning time to prepare or to work for the next step for Netanyahu, not for the Palestinian, not for the issue, not for the prisoners, or not for the exchanging between the Palestinian prisoners or the Israeli hostages. Israel is going to work for much more than we think in this ceasefire or in the agreement or other side.
All right. I would like to ask you another question, and that concerns Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati, who says that Egypt's Gaza reconstruction plan is ready as far as they are concerned, and it will be presented at an emergency Arab summit on Tuesday, that is tomorrow. He did make this comment where, in a news conference with the EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean. He also said Egypt will be seeking international backing and funding for this plan. And of course, after the meeting of the Arab states, there's also going to be a very important meeting of the member states of the OIC in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to discuss how to present the plans. He says, Mr. Abdelati says, we will ensure that the results of the Arab Summit are presented to the world in the best possible way. But how do you see these developments, this important meeting that is going to happen tomorrow, as well as the OIC meeting that will be happening, and the plan that has been prepared by the Egyptians? Is any of this implementable in your point of view?
Up to my point of view, I really am not full of hopes because America has the deep pressure in this area. First of all, after the reconstruction Arab plan or Egyptian plan, we hope that the Arab Summit can offer something to the Syrian issue, the Syrian suffering, to stop this this pain for the Syrians. But if we make a decision, is it ready, or is it would have the way to be accomplished, to be achieved? Now the problem, we, the Arab or the Islamic State, like and wish, but those hopes or wish, do we have the tools? Do we have the do we have the arrangement, or could we achieve this arrangement to support, to indeed reconstruct the what has damaged or had destroyed in Gaza? We hope that the Arab Summit can offer something new. It is a new development, I think, nowadays to find Russia, excuse me, to find Egypt or Saudi Arabia or the other Arab state in the summit are going to say something new, to make to unify, to be unity, or to look for the unity in supporting Palestinian people. Now, maybe we are looking for the two-state solutions. It could be, but uh, the Israeli does Israeli like to ready to agree with the two-state solutions? We don't think so, because the Israeli Knesset uh, since 3 or 4 months, they said it is forbidden for Palestinian to have the another solution, another state. Now we there are only one solution for Palestinians, or to is to do immigration, do transfer, to leave their land. Uh, they said for to Palestine, to Lebanon, to Syria, to Egypt, to Jordan. Even that Netanyahu said, okay, Saudi Arabia is very wide country. We can take it can receive the Palestinian people and make the Palestinian state in Saudi Arabia. That is a very deep threat against the Arab state, against the Arab states, as I said. I don't think that Israel is going to agree even to two-state solutions, or another solution which could let the Palestinian stay in Gaza Strip, or even the West Bank.
All right, all right. Thank you very much, General retired RG Mohammad Abbas, to have joined us and to have discussed the Palestinian issue and the latest developments with us. Thank you very much, sir. To you, Ambassador Jauhar, Saleem, I'll couple many things together and I'll ask your point of view on that. Sure. Tomorrow's summit of the Arab leaders, a counter proposal that is going to be sent to the US President as a result of that. My first part of the question is, what expectations do you have whatsoever as far as this counter proposal or this summit is concerned, which is also going to be followed by a summit of the OIC countries to be held in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, concerning also this counter proposal and the proposal by Egypt. At the same time, when on the one hand Donald Trump says that it's up to Israel to uphold the truce, his top envoy on the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, says that we are making a lot of progress, and Israel is sending a team right now as we speak for continuity of talks as far as the ceasefire is concerned. Why is there a duality as far as the US point of view on the future of the ceasefire talks is concerned? And secondly, what expectations do you have from these different important Arab country meetings that are going to happen in the next couple of days?
Yeah, first of all, I would just recall what I said before Trump's election, and I had felt at the time that Trump would win. I had felt that when Trump comes to power, the US policy would tilt even to a greater degree towards Israel, and that we see that happening already. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. Now, but on the other hand, what you mentioned about these summits taking place in Arab countries, this is interesting, and it's a positive development that these Arab countries, they have become more sort of, like vocal now, and they're coordinating and sort of, like articulating their voices, which is good, because you would recall that just some years ago, during President Trump's first term, many of, like some of them at least, had been signing Abraham Accords, which was basically what? Which was that, okay, just forget about the Palestinian sort of, statehood question. Let's just normalize with Israel.
True.
And 4 countries did that then. And sort of, and Trump's plan was, if all this had not happened in this term, many more countries would have done. That is not happening anymore.
That is not happening.
Because those countries have now resolved that unless there's a path to statehood, or at least some concessions towards that, in that direction, the normalization is not going to happen. So, Biden tried, you would recall that. He came up with what he called a grand reconciliation plan, whereby Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries would normalize, primarily Saudi Arabia would normalize with Israel in lieu of a path to statehood. But Israelis didn't agree, and so the plan kind of, fizzled out. Now, these Arab countries, when they get together on that, of course that adds to their voice, and it gets greater significance. On the other hand, is Netanyahu going to agree to that at some point? I find it very hard to believe. You know, okay, maybe sometimes, you know, they just kind of they come up with a smoke screen of sorts. But in terms of the actual intentions, I don't really think he's going to move towards that. And so far as the Americans are concerned, if Israel doesn't agree to that or doesn't want to move in that direction, America is not going to really push very hard. As has happened in terms or in the times of some previous US administrations. I think the last president who really tried to push was Obama, and before that Clinton, but they both failed to put adequate pressure on Israel. In fact, both the presidents, Clinton realized that he got into trouble domestically, and Obama realized that he can't do that. You know, but after that, no, you know, Trump did not. Biden tried to sort of, you know, incentivize Israel, you know, towards a sort of, you know, path to Palestine through normalization of relations with the Arab countries and everything.
But he didn't succeed.
But even he didn't succeed. And I don't really see a great chance of that happening now.
So uncertainty as far as the Middle East is concerned, uncertainty when it comes to Palestine, and uncertainty when it comes to the future of the ceasefire agreement is also concerned, specifically now during the holy month of Ramadan, when the people in Palestine maybe thought that they would get some kind of respite, but no, in fact, not only on a humanitarian side, but also on different sides, they are only, you know, encountering more and more plight. Thank you very much, Jauhar Saleem Saab, who have joined us as far as the whole show is concerned, to talk on economy and to talk on this very important Middle Eastern issue of Palestine is concerned. Let's come to our last story very quickly, and that concerns the 97th Academy Awards, or the Oscars, that happened last night in as per US timings, and this morning as far as Pakistan timings are concerned. A lot of surprises that came. People thought that the Substance would be getting a major award specifically for the Best Actress, but it was in fact Anora that got the award for Best Actress. It also got the award for Achievement in Direction, Best Film, Achievement in Film Editing, and the Original Screenplay. So 5 basic major Academy Awards were won by Anora, which was a small film, but a film that gained a lot of respect amongst the critiques. Also, Conclave, that won the Adapted Screenplay Award, The Brutalist, that won the award for the Best Actor in Leading Role. Also, Cinematography and Original Score were all won by Brutalist, so 3 awards for The Brutalist. I'm Still Here, a film by Brazil that was really acclaimed across the world, got the Best International Film Oscar this time. And Real Pains, Kieran Culkin, who has been getting awards everywhere, also got the award for Best Supporting Actor. Emilia Perez, the film got 2 Oscars, first for Best Supporting Actress in the form of Zoe Saldana, and the original score as well. Best Animated Film Flow, and The Substance only got 1 Oscar, and that was in makeup and hairstyling, whereas Dune Part 2 got visual effects and achievement in sound, and Best Documentary Film was No Other Land. I want to end with No Other Land because this was a film that was made by both Israelis and Palestinians on the situation in the Middle East, and how despite that there are many Palestinians and Israeli or Jewish people who want to live in harmony, and that is what the sentiment that was prevailing, which I feel got this documentary the best Oscar for documentary feature film. Let's hope, I mean, at the end of the day, that better sense prevails when it comes to the Middle East, and documentary films like No Other Land create much more of an impact they are intended to. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow. The news story segments that pertain to us here in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.